Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada, where I get my sanity living in this material world where the whole economic, political, social systems all over the world are, basically disintegrating before our eyes as the mode of ignorance goes deeper and deeper. And we know because we hear all about it in Prabhupada's purports, but the rest of the world, they don't know. They got no idea why things are falling apart. And therefore they don't know that they can go from ignorance to passion to goodness and find out who God is and how it really started and what the laws are, what to do, what not to do, and be happy. So here we are. We're so lucky. Let's hear Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram first. Srila Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And it goes like this. Sarvashastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Duditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours on a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhikamando matsangin madgudo man mahadana man nisdadaka madbhagya mad ananda namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakara hanamuncha gadachin mam premna ritkanta yospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So before we continue the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, I'd like to make one more point. For all of you out in cyberspace and all of you sitting here, this is the only place in the world that you can get an hour of reading straight through Prabhupada's books every single day. 365, well, 3 minus 8. Cover to cover. Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita. That's it. This is it. Okay. Let everybody know. Like it and share it. Hare Krishna. And not only that, it's the only place where you can learn about the perfection of spiritual knowledge. They don't even know what spiritual knowledge is, what to speak of the perfection of spiritual knowledge. So here we are, chapter 19, Canto 11, the perfection of spiritual knowledge. Summary. This chapter describes how those who practice speculative knowledge eventually give up their method, whereas the pure devotees remain engaged in devotional service eternally. Also described are the different practices of yoga, beginning with yama. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna stated to Uddhava, one who is actually wise, who knows the truth of the self, and possesses transcendental insight, rejects this world of dualities and the so-called knowledge meant for facilitating enjoyment of it. He instead engages himself in trying to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all. This is pure Bhakti Yoga. Transcendental knowledge is greater than such ordinary pious activities as chanting of mantras, but pure devotional service is greater than even knowledge. After this, Lord Krishna requested by Sri Uddhava to describe in full detail pure transcendental knowledge and devotional service, related the same instructions that the greatest of Vaishnavas, Bhishmadev, gave on these topics to Sri Yudhishthira on the occasion of the Battle of Kurukshetra. Following this, after being asked about yama and the other practices of yoga, the Lord enumerated the 12 kinds of yama, beginning with non-violence, and the 12 kinds of niyama, beginning with bodily cleanliness. Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, a self-realized person who has cultivated spiritual knowledge up to the point of enlightenment and who is free from impersonal speculation, understanding the material universe to be simply illusion, should surrender unto me both that knowledge and the means by which he achieved it. Purport. Maya matram idam gyatva indicates knowledge that the eternal spirit soul and the eternal personality of Godhead are completely separate from the temporary qualities of the material world. The word vidya shuddha sampanna means that one should cultivate Vedic knowledge for the purpose of enlightenment and not to make a show of mysticism, intellectuality, or impersonal speculation. Having neutralized the illusory effects of Maya, one should then transfer one's attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, surrendering the process of philosophical negation to the Lord Himself. Srila Jiva Goswami gives the example that when there is danger, the king may issue weapons to private citizens, but after the military victory, the individual citizens return their weapons to the king. Sound familiar? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this point on this verse as follows. Somehow or other, the living entity has to free himself from material illusion, which has covered him since time immemorial. Cultivating desirelessness and renunciation by practice of the mystic yoga system, the living entity develops knowledge of illusion and may thus lift himself above the reach of material ignorance. However, once one is situated on the transcendental platform, both knowledge of illusion and the process of acquiring such knowledge have no further practical application. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the example that a man may be haunted by the ghost of a snake or a tiger. As long as the man is possessed and thinks, I am a snake or I am a tiger, attempts will be made to counteract the ghostly influence by application of jewels, mantras, and herbs. But when the man is freed from possession by ghosts, he again thinks, I am Mr. So-and-so, the son of Mr. So-and-so, and returns to his original nature. At that time, the jewels, the mantras, and herbs have no further immediate application. The word vidya in this verse thus indicates knowledge acquired through philosophical analysis, mystic yoga, austerities, and renunciation. We had that question before, vidya, and how vidya could be, part of material nature. So now it's talking, this is the detail, exactly what vidya is in a material sense. The word vidya in this verse thus indicates knowledge acquired through philosophical analysis, mystic yoga, austerities, and renunciation. Such knowledge of the temporary, illusory nature of this world counteracts ignorance. And there are many Vedic scriptures that train the living entity in such knowledge. Gradually, one gives up his false identification with the material body and mind, and with those material objects that interact with the body and mind. Having realized such counteractive knowledge, one must engage in the loving service of the personality of Godhead and become a pure devotee. When one is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, there is naturally little interest in the innumerable details of illusion, and gradually one is transferred to the spiritual world. Text 2. For learned, self-realized philosophers, I am the only object of worship, the desired goal of life, the means of achieving that goal, and the settled conclusion of all knowledge. Indeed, because I am the cause of their happiness and their freedom from unhappiness, such learned souls have no effective purpose or dear object in life except me. Purport. In the previous verse, Lord Krishna stated that one should ultimately surrender unto him that knowledge by which the material world is seen as illusion. Material attachments are certainly problems for the living entities, since they are diseases of the spirit soul. One who has contracted a skin disease that causes terrible itching gains only flickering relief by scratching the unbearable sores. If he does not scratch, he suffers greatly, but by scratching, even though there is an instantaneous sensation of pleasure, unbearable misery follows as the itching increases. Real happiness is not found in scratching one's skin infections, but rather in becoming free from such disease. Conditioned souls are harassed by many illusory desires, and in desperation they try to gratify their senses through the hopeless scratching processes of illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. They further try to gain relief through material society, friendship, and love, but the result is unbearable suffering. Real happiness is to eliminate completely the itching disease of material desire. Such material desire is a disease of the soul. One must acquire knowledge to treat this disease and eliminate it. Such therapeutic knowledge is essential as long as one is diseased. But when one is fully healthy, such technical medical knowledge is no longer interesting to the healthy person, and he may leave such knowledge to the doctors. Similarly, in the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one need not think continually of one's personal problems, but may rather think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, with love and devotion. Lord Krishna advises in the previous verse that one should eliminate one's personal problems through technical knowledge of illusion. After giving up constant meditation on such problems, one can then become a lover of God. After giving up constant meditation on such problems, when you start thinking of problems, then you can become a lover of God. Lord Krishna certainly guides each and every sincere devotee internally within the heart and externally through the bona fide spiritual master. In this way, Lord Krishna gradually trains his sincere devotees to give up their irrational attachment to dead matter. Once freedom has been achieved, a devotee begins to seriously cultivate his relationship with Lord Krishna in the spiritual sky. One may falsely think that just as at a certain stage of advancement, one ceases to concentrate on technical, analytic knowledge of illusion, so at another stage, one may give up loving devotional service to Lord Krishna. To nullify such speculation, Lord Sri Krishna here states in various ways that he is the supreme eternal goal of all truly learned human beings. Indeed, the most prominent scholars within the universe are the sages, such as the four Kumaras, who accept Lord Krishna as their only worshipable object. Because they have discovered that they are eternal fragmental portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, they are not interested in fruitive activities and mental speculation. Lord Krishna awards celestial bliss and freedom from anxiety to his sincere followers, who have no purpose or beloved object in life other than the Lord. Text 3. Those who have achieved complete perfection through philosophical and realized knowledge recognized my lotus feet to be the supreme transcendental object. Thus, the learned transcendentalist is most dear to me, and by his perfect knowledge, he maintains me in happiness. Purport. The words Param Shreshtam Vidur Mama, they recognize my lotus feet to be supreme, certainly eliminate the impersonalist philosophers from the category of Sangsiddha, or completely perfected philosophers. Lord Krishna here refers to such great transcendental scholars as the four Kumaras, Shukadev Goswami, Sri Vyasadeva, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord similarly states in the Bhagavad Gita 7:17 and 18, Tesham Jnani Nityayukta Ekabhaktir Vishishyate Priyo hi Jnanino Tyartam Ahangsa cha mama priyaha. Of these, the wise one who is in full knowledge, in union with me, through pure devotional service, is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. Udadak sarva evaite jnani twatmaiva me matam astitak sahiyuktatma ma meva anutamam gatim. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider verily to dwell in me. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he attains me. Jnana refers to an authorized, philosophical, and analytical perception of reality. And when such knowledge is clearly realized through the sanctification of consciousness, the resultant comprehensive experience is called vijnana. Speculative, impersonal knowledge does not actually purify the heart of a living entity, but rather merges him even deeper into forgetfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as a father is always proud of his son's education, similarly, Lord Krishna becomes very happy to see the living entities acquiring a sound spiritual education and thus making progress on the way back home, back to Godhead. Text 4. That perfection which is produced by a small fraction of spiritual knowledge cannot be duplicated by performing austerities, visiting holy places, chanting silent prayers, giving in charity, or engaging in other pious activities. Purport. Thank you. I want to repeat that, please. May I? That perfection which is produced by a small fraction of spiritual knowledge, cannot be duplicated by performing austerities, visiting holy places, chanting silent prayers, giving in charity, or engaging in other pious activities. Purport. Jnana here refers to a clear understanding of the Lord's supreme dominion over all that be. And this realized knowledge is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That the Lord is supreme is confirmed in the previous verse by the words Padam Shreshtam Vidur Mama. One may perform penances or visit holy places with a proud mentality or material motivation. Do you have an exclamation mark for an L? Yes. You do? I see. You don't though. You don't. You do? I can't help it. I'm an editor. I see these things, you know. Hey, Sarva, welcome. You're just in time. We saved you 2 seats. You can take your pick. I'm just funning with you. Just passing through. Well, we're just hearing about it. We're just hearing about it, you know. When after passing through for a long time, you'll come to the conclusion. Thanks, Sarva. Haribol. This is nectar, pure, unadulterated nectar. I'm going to read it again. Jnana here refers to a clear understanding of the Lord's supreme dominion over all that be. And this realized knowledge is not different from the Supreme Personality of God. Everyone here, anyone in this room who actually accepts that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, please raise your hand. I'm telling you, there you go, it's right there. That the Lord is supreme is confirmed by the previous verse, by the words Padam Shreshtam Vidur Mama. The next time I see anyone in depression or not enlivened to the max, I'm going to remind them that the vote they took. You know, they held their man. They knew that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if you're depressed, then, you know, stop it. It doesn't belong there. I mean, one may be deeply absorbed in the thought and be deep, but depressed, forget it. Unhappy, forget it. One may perform penances or visit holy places with a proud mentality or material motivation. Similarly, one may chant prayers to God or give charity or perform other externally pious activities with many bizarre, hypocritical, or even demoniac motivations. Realized knowledge of the supremacy of Lord Krishna, however, is a solid connection with the spiritual world. And if one pursues this holy understanding, one is gradually promoted to the highest level of conscious existence, called Vaikuntha, or the Kingdom of God. Congratulations to all of those present in cyberspace. Hare Krishna. Text 5. Therefore, my dear Uddhava, through knowledge, you should understand your actual self. Then, advancing by clear realization of Vedic knowledge, you should worship me in the mood of loving devotion. Purport. The word vijnana indicates realized knowledge of one's original spiritual form. Every living entity has an eternal spiritual form, which lies dormant until one arouses one's original Krishna consciousness. Without knowledge of one's own spiritual personality, it is not possible to cultivate love of the Supreme Personality, Lord Krishna. Therefore, the words Gyatva Swatmanam are significant here, indicating that every living entity can realize his full potential as an individual person only in the kingdom of God. Text 6. Formerly great sages, through the sacrifice of Vedic knowledge, and spiritual enlightenment worshipped me within themselves, knowing me to be the Supreme Lord of all sacrifice and the Supersoul in everyone's heart. Thus coming to me, these sages achieved the supreme perfection. Text 7. My dear Uddhava, the material body and mind, composed of the three modes of material nature, attach themselves to you, but they are actually illusion, since they appear only at the present, having no original or ultimate existence. How is it possible, therefore, that the various stages of the body, namely birth, growth, reproduction, maintenance, dwindling, and death, can have any relation to your eternal self? I'll let that sink in for a couple of minutes. These phases relate only to the material body, which previously did not exist. Can we agree on that point? At one point, my material body did not exist. I think everyone should agree on that one. These phases relate only to the material body, which previously did not exist, and ultimately will not exist. Checkmate. The body exists merely at the present moment. Purport. The example is given that a man walking in the forest may see a rope but consider it to be a snake. Such perception is maya, or illusion, although the rope actually exists and a snake also exists in another place. Illusion thus refers to the false identification of one object with another. The material body exists briefly and then disappears. In the past, the body did not exist, and in the future, it will not exist. It enjoys a flickering, momentary existence in so-called present time. If we falsely identify ourselves as the material body or mind, we are creating an illusion. One who identifies himself as American, Russian, Chinese, Mexican, black or white, man or woman, communist or capitalist, and so on, accepting such designations as his permanent identity, is certainly in deep illusion. He can be compared to a sleeping man who sees himself acting in a different body while dreaming. In the previous verse, Lord Krishna told Uddhava that spiritual knowledge is the means of achieving the highest perfection, and now the Lord is explicitly describing such knowledge. Text 8. Sri Uddhava said, O Lord of the universe, O form of the universe, please explain to me that process of knowledge which automatically brings detachment and direct perception of the truth, which is transcendental and which is traditional among great spiritual philosophers. This knowledge, sought by elevated personalities, describes loving devotional service unto your Lordship. Purport. Those who are able to cross over the darkness of material existence are called Mahat, or great personalities. Secondary items, like cosmic consciousness, or Houston consciousness, or universal control, do not deviate the attention of such great souls from loving service to the Lord. Sri Uddhava desires to hear knowledge of the eternal religious principles that are the traditional aim and objective of all superior personalities. Text 9. My dear Lord, for one who is being tormented on the terrible path of birth and death and is constantly overwhelmed by the threefold miseries, I do not see any possible shelter other than your two lotus feet, which are just like a refreshing umbrella that pours down showers of delicious water. an umbrella that showers water. Usually you get an umbrella to keep the water from coming onto you.
Did you say water or nectar?
Nectar. Sorry. Thank you. That pours down, that way, you earned the whole thing again. My dear Lord, for one who is being tormented on the terrible path of birth and death and is constantly overwhelmed by the threefold miseries, I do not see any possible shelter other than your two lotus feet, which are just like a refreshing umbrella that pours down showers of delicious nectar. Makes more sense than water. Purport. Lord Krishna, recognizing Uddhava's highly intellectual nature, has repeatedly recommended to him that one should achieve perfection by cultivation of transcendental knowledge. But the Lord has also clearly demonstrated that such knowledge must bring one to the point of loving devotional service to Him, for otherwise it is useless. In this verse, Sri Uddhava corroborates Lord Krishna's statements that actual happiness is obtained by surrendering to his lotus feet. When the incarnation of Godhead, Prithu Maharaj, was crowned, the demigod Vayu presented him with an umbrella that constantly sprayed fine particles of water. The Lord's two lotus feet are similarly compared here to a wonderful umbrella that produces a constant shower of delicious nectar, the bliss of Krishna consciousness. Normally, speculative analytic knowledge terminates in an impersonal conception of the absolute truth. But the so-called bliss of merging into impersonal spiritual existence can never be compared to the bliss of Krishna consciousness, as stated here by Sri Uddhava. Krishna consciousness thus automatically constitutes perfect knowledge, since Lord Krishna is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. The words abhihatasya and abhivarshat are significant in this verse. Abhihatasya and abhivarshat. Abhihatasya indicates that one who is being defeated on all sides by the onslaught of material nature, whereas abhivarshat indicates a downpour of nectar that eliminates all of the problems of material existence. By our intelligence, we should look beyond the dull material body and nonsensical material mind to observe the unlimited shower of blissful nectar coming from the two lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then our real good fortune will begin. So there you go. That's the solution when you're on the mental platform somewhere. Pick up these books and read them and bathe in blissful nectar ocean, sprinkling from these books. Then you'll realize that actually you're very fortunate. You're not as unfortunate as you thought you were. Text 10. O Almighty Lord, please be merciful and uplift this hopeless living entity who has fallen into the dark hole of material existence, where the snake of time has bitten him. In spite of such abominable conditions, this poor living entity has tremendous desire to relish the most insignificant material happiness. Please save me, my Lord, as pouring down the nectar of by pouring down the nectar of your instructions, which awaken one to spiritual freedom. This is really nice. In one part of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada talking about the Bhakti Lata Bij. And he says, the instructions given by the spiritual master, the following of which delivers pure love of God, is called the Bhakti Lata Bij. Here it says, please save me, my Lord, by pouring down the nectar of your instructions. which awaken one to spiritual freedom. Purport. Material life, so much cherished by the non-devotees, is here compared to a dark hole filled with poisonous snakes. In material life, there is certainly no clear understanding of one's ultimate identity, of God or of the universe. Everything is vague and dark. In material life, the poisonous snake of time is always threatening, and at any moment, our near and dear ones will be killed by the mortal fangs of the serpent. Ultimately, we ourselves will also be bitten and killed by the poisonous effects of time. The word sampititam indicates that the fall down of a living entity is complete. In other words, he cannot get up again. Sri Uddhava therefore appeals to the Lord to be kind to these poor fallen souls, humbly represented by his own self. If one receives the Lord's mercy, then even without any further qualification, one can go back home, back to Godhead. And without the mercy of Lord Krishna, the most learned, austere, and powerful, wealthy, or beautiful man will be pathetically crushed by the material world's machinery of illusion. These purports are really poetic. Let's hear that again. Phew. Sri Uddhava therefore appeals to the Lord to be kind to these poor fallen souls, humbly represented by his own self. If one receives the Lord's mercy, then even without any further qualification, one can go back home, back to Godhead. And without the mercy of Lord Krishna, the most learned, austere, powerful, wealthy, or beautiful man will be pathetically crushed by the material world's machinery of illusion. Oh, man. Nicely said, well said. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, as described here, is Mahanubhava, or the greatest, most powerful, and most merciful personality, whose influence extends everywhere. The Lord's mercy is manifest in the form of his nectarian instructions, such as Bhagavad Gita and the Uddhava Gita being spoken here. The word Chudra Sukoru Tarsham reveals the irony of material existence. Although material happiness is chudra, or ridiculous and insignificant, our desire to enjoy it is uru, tremendous. Our disproportionate hankering to enjoy dead matter is certainly an illusory state of mind, and it gives us constant distress, keeping us bound up in the dark hole of material existence. Every living entity should put aside his false prestige based on ephemeral bodily qualifications and appeal sincerely to the Supreme Lord Krishna for his mercy. The Lord hears every single appeal from even the most fallen soul, and the effects of the Lord's mercy are wonderful. Shall I read that again? You're not interested in this, are you? Okay, I'll read it again. The Lord hears every sincere appeal from even the most fallen soul, and the effects of the Lord's mercy are wonderful. Just took away all excuses. I'm the most fallen. That's okay. Although jnanis, yogis, and fruitive workers are laboriously endeavoring to achieve their respective goals, their position is precarious and uncertain. Simply by achieving the mercy of Lord Krishna, however, one can very easily attain the highest perfection of life. If even one who is not a great or pure devotee of the Lord sincerely appeals to the Lord for his mercy, the Lord is sure to give it generously. If you're too busy asking, well, what do I do? How would I do this? How can I do that? How is this? How is it that? How is it this? How is it that? Just, please, oh Lord, give me your mercy. And you get everything. Generously. Text 11. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, just as you are now inquiring from me, similarly, in the past, King Yudhishthira, who considered no one his enemy, inquired from the greatest of the upholders of religious principles, Bhishma, while all of us were carefully listening. Do you know how many chapters the instructions of Bhishma are? 325. You know how many chapters the Bhagavatam is? 335. Just to put everything in perspective here. I mean, it's true that some of those chapters are very short, just a few verses, but still, 335 chapters, Bhishma's instructions to Yudhishthira. And Krishna sat and listened to the whole thing. And that's what he wanted. Text 12. When the great battle of Kurukshetra had ended, King Yudhishthira was overwhelmed by the death of many beloved well-wishers. And thus, after listening to instructions about many religious principles, he finally inquired about the path of liberation. Text 15. Text 13. 15? 13. I will now speak unto you those religious principles of Vedic knowledge, detachment, self-realization, faith, and devotional service that were heard directly from the mouth of Bhishma Dev. And obviously it's going to be in a sutric form because it's 335 chapters. And he's going to do it in just, a few couple. Krishna can do anything. Tenji. Text 34. Text 14. Sorry, I'm starting to see things. Sorry. I personally approve of that knowledge by which one sees the combination of 9, 11, 5, and 3 elements in all living entities, and ultimately one element within those 28. Purport. The 9 elements are material nature, the living entity, the Mahat Tattva, false ego, and the 5 objects of sense perception, namely sound, touch, form, taste, and aroma. The 11 elements are the 5 working senses, the voice, hands, legs, anus, and genitals, plus the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the ears, touch, eyes, tongue, and nostrils, along with the coordinative sense, the mind. Notice, coordinating sense. The 5 elements are the 5 physical elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky. And the 3 elements are the 3 modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. All living organisms, from mighty Lord Brahma down to an insignificant weed, are composed of these 28 elements. The one element within all 28 is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, who is all-pervading within the material and spiritual worlds. One can easily understand that the material universe is composed of innumerable causes and effects. Since Lord Krishna is the cause of all causes, all secondary causes and their effects are ultimately non-different from the personality of Godhead. This understanding constitutes real knowledge, or jnana, which is essential for perfecting one's life. Prabhupada once coined a phrase which kind of says this, but in a very far way. The absolute truth must contain everything within our knowledge and our perception, and everything outside our knowledge or perception, in order to be the absolute truth. Text 15. When one no longer sees the 28 separated material elements which arise from a single cause, but rather sees the cause itself, the personality of Godhead, at that time one's direct experience is called vijnana, or self-realization. Purport. The difference between jnana, ordinary Vedic knowledge, and vijnana, self-realization, can be understood as follows. A conditioned soul, although cultivating Vedic knowledge, continues to identify himself to some extent with the material body and mind, and consequently with the material universe. In trying to understand the world he lives in, the conditioned soul learns through Vedic knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the one supreme cause of all material manifestations. He comes to understand the world around him, which he accepts more or less as his world. As he progresses in spiritual realization, breaking through the barrier of bodily identification and realizes the existence of the eternal soul, he gradually identifies himself as part and parcel of the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. At that time, he is no longer interested in the personality of Godhead merely as the supreme explanation of the material world. Rather, he begins to reorient his entire mode of consciousness so that the central object of his attention is the personality of Godhead. Such a reorientation is required, since the Supreme Lord is the factual center and cause of everything. A self-realized soul in the stage of vijnana thus experiences the personality of Godhead not merely as the creator of the material world, but as the supreme living entity existing blissfully in his own eternal context. As one progresses in one's realization of the Supreme Lord in his own abode in the spiritual sky, one gradually becomes disinterested in the material universe and ceases to define the Supreme Lord in terms of his temporary manifestations. A self-realized soul in the stage of vijnana is not at all attracted by objects that are created, maintained, and ultimately destroyed. The stage of jnana is the preliminary stage of knowledge for those still identifying themselves in terms of the material universe, whereas vijnana is the mature stage of knowledge for those who see themselves as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Text 16. Commencement, termination, and maintenance are the stages of material causation. That which consistently accompanies all these material phases from one creation to another and remains alone when all material phases are annihilated is the one eternal. Purport. The Lord here reiterates that the one Supreme Personality of Godhead is the basis of unlimited material variety. Material activity is the chain of cause and effect relationships by which innumerable objects are produced. A particular material effect is converted into a subsequent cause, and when the causal phase is terminated, the effect disappears. Fire causes firewood to burn to ashes, and when the causal function of fire is finished, fire itself, which was the effect of a previous cause, is also terminated. The simple fact is that all material objects are created, maintained, and ultimately annihilated by the supreme potency of the Lord. And when the entire field of material cause and effect is withdrawn, so that all cause-effect relationships vanish, the personality of Godhead remains in his own abode. Therefore, although innumerable objects may function as causes, they are not the ultimate or supreme cause. Only the personality of Godhead is the absolute cause. Similarly, although material things may exist, they do not always exist. Similarly, although material things exist, they do not always exist. The personality of Godhead alone has absolute existence. By the process of jnana, or knowledge, one should understand the supreme position of the Lord. I mean, that's a lovely exposition of what knowledge is. That's one of the best things I've ever heard about what knowledge is. Kudos. Kudos. I'll stop the reading here. Hare Krishna. This is what's called the expansion of consciousness. A little child whose consciousness is limited, is not mature, is not educated, can come in and see if his mother's here, and if not, she's not here, run away. You know. Yes, Prana. I was hoping that you would start us off.
Well, I really like that explanation of jnana and vijnana. How one's conception of Krishna at first is in relation to oneself, and then at the more advanced stage of devotional service, one's conception of oneself is actually in relation to Krishna in the spiritual world, rather than Krishna. How does Krishna relate to the material world? So it seems like I thought that was really brilliant, and I mean, I was just reflecting practically, like, yeah, when we chant japa or go through our day or pray to the deities or what have you, usually it's, for me at least, it's surrounding my own body, mind, and life. But I don't rarely put that aside and think about Krishna's life.
That was the point. Very well said. That was a good summary. Very nice. Very good. I was thinking of this, when I heard that part, I was thinking of how, the point I made during the reading, that the absolute truth must contain everything within our experience and outside of our experience in order to be the absolute truth. Then I remembered that section of the process of creation in which it describes how Krishna, in the form of Mahavishnu, which is an expansion of expansion, amalgamates himself into the material energy like a reflection. Amalgamates all of his qualities and all the information content that is required to create all the forms and all the environments and all the activities and everything. It's all there in Krishna. It must be. Otherwise, he couldn't be the source, and he must be because there must be a source. I heard Prabhupada say the other day, so there's a woman there, and then there's a baby. And the baby is the lady is the mother of the baby. And then if someone thinks there is no father, is it possible? Someone may not know who the father is. That happens especially nowadays, like anything goes. You don't know who sometimes. They have the DNA packets and something, you can figure it out, but you have to go around to every male in the whole world with your little DNA packet and to figure out if it's your father if you don't know who it is. But to think, there's material nature, there's all these living entities, and to think that there's no father is just dullness. It's complete ignorance. It's not possible. The idea that God is dead, impossible. That was Prabhupada's summarization of that idea. Yes, Pranata.
Thank you very much. I was just really appreciating the word that came to mind was how comprehensive Srila Prabhupada, his purports are explaining how we're not the body. You know, how the body never didn't exist before, and how it's not going to exist ultimately, and how to think that that's you is an illusion, and how comprehensive and practical and relatable how he explains it is just really sweet and nice to hear.
Yes, very, very sweet, very sweet. Yes, Prana.
I really like also those what Uddhava said to Krishna. How I thought those were really sweet verses about the shower of nectar from the umbrella of his lotus feet, and also that point how he said he's in the ditch of material existence and the snake of time, and despite such abominable conditions, he says, how is it that I still have such an intense eagerness to go after such insignificant material sense gratification? And I think it was that verse in the purport where it's mentioned about how the soul should make a sincere appeal to Krishna, and Krishna hears that, and I thought that was poignant.
Yes. That was the essence of it. That was the Ganatarla, the thick, most condensed part of it. Essence.
And I thought, Krishna's mercy, what about even Lord Chaitanya's mercies?
Namo Mahavaranyaya.
Yeah.
Krishna Prema. Pradayate. Krishna didn't liberally give Krishna Prema himself. And everyone saw him, but very few, given or had love for him. Which is interesting because Lord Chaitanya came as a devotee. He wasn't a devotee, but he was a devotee of himself. But that's how the devotees are supposed to give. So we want to awaken our prema so that we can be able to give it to others. Because Prabhupada's so kind, he gives us these books to give out to. Even if we're not, what was that point? That one point at the end of one. Even if you're the most fallen, even if you're the most insignificant, if you pray to Krishna for his mercy, he gives it in a wonderful way. Or something. What did it say?
Something like generously.
Generously, yeah. So we have no excuse. It's the same. It's in Sanatana Goswami's prayer that we say every day. The end of the prayer. What's the last prayer? Somebody said,
to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen.
O exalter of the most fallen. So even if you're thinking you're the most fallen, that makes you eligible for Lord Chaitanya's mercy, most eligible for Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it states, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami states, that the mercy of Lord Chaitanya flows naturally to the most fallen. And just look what Prabhupada did. He picked up the most fallen and he just spread the movement all over the world. Inconceivable. So it's payback time, boys, girls. Payback time.
I don't know if if I can, there's this verse Rup Damodar Goswami recites to Lord Chaitanya when he meets him in Madhya Lila when he first comes to Puri about how about Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Can I read it?
Yeah, please do. Please, please.
You've read it before.
Read it, yeah, but
No,
I'd love to hear it again.
Okay, he said, this is Madhya Lila, chapter 10, verse 119. O ocean of mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let there be an awakening of your auspicious mercy, which easily drives away all kinds of material lamentation, by making everything pure and blissful. Indeed, your mercy awakens transcendental bliss, and covers all material pleasures. By your auspicious mercy, quarrels and disagreements arising among different scriptures are vanquished. Your auspicious mercy pours forth transcendental mellows, and thus causes the heart to jubilate. Your mercy, which is full of joy, always stimulates devotional service and glorifies conjugal love of God. May transcendental bliss be awakened within my heart by your causeless mercy.
That says it all, yeah? Sri Damodar Goswami. When Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and went to Puri, Purushottam Brahmachari, who was to become Sri Damodar, became so depressed that he left Navadvip and he went to, I think he went to Varanasi, I think he went to Kashi or someplace, and he studied and he studied from a pure Vaishnava. He didn't study from Mayavadi. He learned so many things, you know. It's like Jiva Goswami did that same thing. He went there before. He got an instruction from Lord Nityananda. First go to Kashi and learn, you know, all the philosophies perfectly, and then join your uncles in Vrindavan. And so he came. I don't think it wasn't clear exactly how he realized that Lord Chaitanya was in Puri, or how he. Obviously, it was Lord Chaitanya's GPS.
Rushed there.
Yeah, just rushed there. And he became the most intimate, you know, associate of Lord Chaitanya. May I be excused by the exalted assembly of sages? I have to take some medicine and take rest. I'm fighting something. And thank you so much. Thank you everyone out there in cyberspace. You know, sometimes Krishna gives even the most gives devotees, you know, conditions that appear to be inauspicious, just so that they can, that point that was made, you know, that if a devotee approaches the Lord with sincere, you know, supplication, having understood that you're not the body, but sometimes even if we understand we're not the body, we get a condition that forces us to see just how miserable the body is, so that our supplication to the Lord can be even more intense and pure and sincere. So this is the nectar of being in this movement, to find this out. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Uddhava Gita ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. See you all out in cyberspace. Tomorrow is Saturday. It's going so very fast, my God. Wasn't it just Saturday? Wasn't it just Saturday? What?
Very fast.
Wasn't it just Saturday? Okay. See you at 6 o'clock. Oh, Rati Manjari made a nice comment.
Rati Manjari says, "Thank you for your generous readings, day after day, and the lovely discussions afterwards. They make life in this material world bearable and put everything in a spiritual perspective. We are all indebted to all of you."
There you go. That's what I was saying the other day, right? You don't think it's just me. It's all you guys together, the ones that come day after day after day after day after day. All glories to your loving service. And Rati, all glories to your consciousness. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock, right here in Radha Lane, the live studios to daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.